Everyone, my name is Wei Chun, and me and my teammates Ray, Jiayang, Sean, and Timothy will be giving you guys an educational training session regarding the differences between Japan and US, in hopes that it will better equip you guys with the knowledge necessary to succeed in your expatriate assignments in Japan. So the next part will be the cultural differences between Japan and the US. So to continue this training session, I'll be talking about the cultural differences between Japan and the US. So one of the main reasons why expatriates will fail an assignment overseas is usually due to their inability to cope with and adapt to culture shock. Hence, it is extremely important to understand and be wary of these differences in culture that can cause said culture shock. And I feel like understanding the differences is the single best way to prepare yourself. So, to start things off, one of the main differences in culture is the fact that the Japanese are more formal when compared to Americans. So, how exactly is Japan more formal than America? Well, firstly, how employees address each other in the workplace and their day-to-day life is a good place to look into. Co-workers never call each other by their given names, but are rather addressed by their family names as they feel like it is more polite. On top of that, Japanese companies also have strict dress codes where employees are expected to attend work in a full business suit even in the humid heat of the Japanese summer or when it is not needed. To further elaborate on other ways Japanese culture can differ from the US, the Japanese puts a heavier emphasis on the company rather than their social life, while Americans might be inclined to have a balanced work-life ratio. In Japanese culture, it is very common for them to be working for a majority of the entire day with long hours of overtime. To worsen the situation further, they are also expected to socialize with their co-workers even after working hours. So a prime example of this is the concept of nomikai, which roughly translates to drinking party in English. This is where co-workers would meet up after a hard day's work at either a restaurant or a bar where they would drink and socialize with each other. This would also further inhibit Japanese employees from making friends and socializing with people outside of their workplace, which is vastly different compared to American culture, where workers are not socially obligated to attend such social events and are free to socialize with whoever they want to. So, finally, a recommendation for my fellow expatriates who are seeking to further their careers in Japan. All I can say is that the Japanese puts an extreme emphasis on politeness, formality, and the social obligations that exist in Japanese society. Hence, my only recommendation to you guys would be to be more open with your Japanese co-workers. You should put more emphasis on building meaningful relationships with your Japanese workmates and communicate with them regarding the social obligations and taboos that you should be wary of. So, in a way that I like to put it best, the best way to learn of a culture of a country is to throw yourself into the lion's den and learn it firsthand. So, this concludes my part, and I will now pass it on to my group mate. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean, and today I'll be presenting about language barriers that may arise during an expatriate assignment. It is without a doubt that for any company or workplace to succeed, effective communication is vital as it plays a major role in a firm or company's success. Effective communication not only ensures effective workflow, efficiency in getting tasks done, as well as being able to reach organizational goals and be more aligned with core company values, but also ensures that confusion as well as miscommunication does not occur. As an expatriate with an assignment task in a company in Japan, it is vital that the language barrier can be broken by Japanese companies, as Japanese companies prefer the use of their own native language. To dive deeper into breaking the language barrier when an American worker goes to Japan as an expatriate, it is also important to note that there are different levels in the Japanese language. This can be seen where there is a social level of Japanese language, which is more commonly used when conversing with co-workers, and there is also the more formal respective version of the Japanese language that is used when talking to individuals of higher authority, such as managers or supervisors. This level of the Japanese language is said to be more formal and professional, and is also often used when approaching customers as well. When this formal version of the Japanese language is not used when speaking to individuals of higher authority, it may be deemed disrespectful, as it is deemed unprofessional when not used when approaching customers. With this, it is my recommendation that as an expatriate, the most important aspect when it comes to communication is ensuring that you as an individual is knowledgeable enough regarding their language to break through this language barrier. This can be achieved by going for Japanese language classes a few months prior to arriving at the host country. Apart from this, it is also recommended that as an expatriate, you need to familiarize yourself with the different intricacies and levels of the Japanese language that may vary depending on the social context, as well as it will show a great level of professionalism and will benefit the assignment being a success overall. That'll be all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Timothy and I will be presenting on context culture. If cultural differences between countries are not adopted well for an expatriate, it may become a source of inefficiency, confusion, frustration, anxiety, and stress at work for them. Subtle differences in communication patterns and the complex variation in what is considered good business or what common sense from one country to another have tremendous impact on how we understand one another and ultimately on how we get the job done, as stated by Erin Mayer, professor in organizational behavior and specialist on cross-cultural management in the Culture Map. Countries like the US and Japan have drastically different context cultures. Japan is a great example of high context culture country. In a high context culture, the similarity is an important characteristic. This is because majority of the population in high context cultures typically have the same level of education as well as shared ethnicity, religion, and history. The Japanese will use communication that focuses on underlining context, meaning, and tone in the message, and not just the words themselves. On the other hand, the US is a low context culture country. They are usually diverse and focus on the individual instead of the group. Since there are so many differences within a low context culture, communication must be basic enough to allow as many people to understand as possible. Americans expect communication to be explicitly stated so that there are no risks of confusion, and if there is a message that isn't clear enough, it will slow down the process of communication. Therefore, once the expatriate understands how communication on high context and low context culture varies, they will be able to appreciate these differences and take steps to reduce the communication gap instead of being trapped by the cultural differences and causing misunderstanding and unnecessary conflict. In my recommendation, communication with Japanese colleagues using the correct tone is more important than the actual information of the message. Further coaching on appropriate verbal and non-verbal behavior by situation will help build relationship and rapport with new colleagues. That's all for my part. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lim Jiayang. Now I would like to discuss about the differences in management style between Japan and USA. Since both Japan and America are leaders in the world economy, many people consider their management style to be quite effective. However, upon closer investigation, there are key differences between them. The basic difference between Japanese and Western employees is the connecting relationship between the employee and the employer. This relationship has become a key aspect of the individual and his or her identity in Japan. This employee and employer bond often turns out to be a stronger relationship compared to the parents and family relationship. On the other hand, the bond between employee and employer in the West is relatively weak, as it is generally based on a relationship which can be separated independently by either employee or employer with short notice. Besides that, Japanese companies require individual contribution to the whole group but recognize that the whole group must succeed, otherwise the individual's contribution has no meaning. While the US companies' roles are very individualized, contribution of individual is very important as linked to company goals. Japanese attitude about their job and their strong connection with the employer are all the outcome of the Japanese family-style company. Japanese companies has focused their endeavor on human resource improvement that considers a company's employee to be the heart of that company. On the other hand, The Western approach to the relationship between employee and employer does not satisfy the value of the employee or individually. In the Western approach, therefore, the employee is not essentially considered to be part of the company that employs him or her. The employee is an outsider who provides service to the company for a price. And once the price has been paid, then the company has accomplished its responsibility to that employee. So, for my recommendation, the expert must be more understanding and flexible when working. It is because the management style is different in these both countries. So if the manager cannot be more flexible in the working, he cannot get his job done eventually. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ray. Now I will be presenting the hierarchy part in Japan. Hierarchy actually contributed a lot towards the Japanese culture. This is because hierarchy affecting all aspects of social interaction. The two major factors that will be affecting is the age and status. So let me give you some example. So for example, the higher the elderly you are, the more respect you get. The higher the position you are working in, the more respect you get. So in order to have a better meet up with a Japanese businessman, it is better to send in a similar age or similar management level to meet up with them. This is because they will feel more comfortable and more importantly, they feel equal during the meetup. Beside from that, in Japanese working environment, they actually follow a strict instruction from the high hierarchy. From whoever the task is given from the higher hierarchy, they will complete it in time or even OT to make sure the task is completely fluent. Beside from that, Japanese also have a strong understanding of knowing their places in the working environment. For example, if your job is to print out the meetup document for the meeting, so he will be the one that actually complete it and not asking for any help from others. And during the meeting, Japanese would be considered as collectivism society and make slow decision period. This is because they are putting harmony of the group above the expression of individual opinion. And another reason is many Japanese have a strong sense of shame of losing their face in public, so try to avoid that during the meetup. So this is why individual opinion is not very welcome in a Japanese meetup. That will be the end of my part. Thank you. By listening through or watching through this video, I believe your expatriate will have a better understanding in social or working culture in Japan. That's the whole group presentation. Thank you.